it's a very deep, it's a very broad topic, okay? And we're going to focus on today about what is it, and about fortune home building and how orientation affects us, okay? So, but to get understanding, we need to start with what is architecture, okay? What does an architect do, and how does an environment affect you? And everybody's got to answer that question. What it means to them, and think about it. And then we'll go on to the next step.
Okay.
Hi, Alan.
Hi.
Oh, okay, sure. Sure, you can go. I don't know who that was.
Okay, sure. You sure? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm Sharon, and I think the architect blueprint, building houses, what it means to me, having a life plan. You don't have a plan, you plan to fail. That's all I have. Thanks.
Okay, can I follow up with another sub question? There could be like a little Socrates method, like we're sitting on the floor right now as friends. Okay, so Sharon, do you see a building have an effect on you? How does it affect you when you go into a space? How do you feel?
Safe, secure, covered, shelter.
So I would say that the architecture can influence your emotional state and your psychology. Much like if you go to a cathedral, you're going to have a different feel than you would if you were in a penitentiary.
Right. Yeah. Right. Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, and I was gonna say, I think even within, like, say, certain homes, right? Like in the same neighborhood, like this was my experience when I was buying a home. I saw like a couple of different homes, and they're all built the same architecturally. But despite that, when you walk into one home, the feeling is completely different from the feeling when you walk into a second home, which is again architecturally built pretty much in the same manner. So I think there's beyond just the actual building shapes that creates a certain energy in like certain spaces. The other thing I wanted to add is I've also heard from a Vastu standpoint, like the way the home is placed in terms of the north south all have effects on the folks living there, their lives. Yeah, so that's another thing I wanted to add. And then of course there's the whole feng shui element to homes and spaces too. I've heard about how you want to be equally, like if you have a nightstand, I've heard based on feng shui you want to have two nightstands and not just one, especially if you're aspiring to have a life partner. You want it to seem like you're already preparing the space for that, and having the mirror not placed in certain spaces in the home. So there's a lot of heard. How much of it is accurate, I don't know, but I try to follow it as much as I can, at least the small things I've heard.
Okay. Anybody else want to take a crack at this? Go ahead.
I think like architecture kind of shapes who your community is too, by just the design of whatever the builder puts into it. And so there's a lot of people may mold themselves given whatever shape the buildings are, what the unconscious energy is that was created, and how maybe places that aren't so inspiring or maybe more of a blank canvas, your more unconscious material can come up.
Okay. All right.
I'll add something. In terms of orientation, I've always wanted bedrooms on the south, so we get the sun in the winter, being in Chicagoland. But what I find for instance, downtown Chicago, there's a lot of famous buildings by famous architects, and they're all different. And despite being suitable for human use and activity, sort of like logically, it's logical where you go and where you do. They all have different feelings. Some are massive, imposing structures. Some are very friendly. Some are very modern. They make you dream, like, what is this? Is that an apartment building or a parking garage? You know, the outside of buildings, I think the architects focus a lot on in terms of design. Of course, the inside, I agree with what everyone else said about that.
Okay. So let's talk about next question. I'm going to show you, so to get your mind thinking. Okay. Are you familiar with a tuning fork? Is everybody here familiar with a tuning fork? What it does, right? Are you familiar with sacred geometry? You understand what that is?
Yep.
Like
So,
golden ratio and that sort of thing?
Correct. Correct. Okay. So we all have all art, whether Western, okay, or Eastern, all have canons. Okay, canons. A canon is basically a proportional system, right? That we can all, agree, right? These canons go across both physical and musical and the relationship to the universe around us. So can everybody perceive that or not? So
there's one example in photography is to put your main subject at where you divide the screen into thirds and you put your main subject in one of the points where it overlaps. And a lot of research, I guess it's Western research, shows that those photos are always more preferred than someone square in the middle. So I think that's an emotional thing, a feeling.
Correct. So I asked for the question today because I'm going to get your more input before we go to a kind of a video from a colleague of mine who's very succinct at this, who is a professional speaker. Because I want to get we have discussion first, okay? Now, when you were born, okay, I want to ask the idea of an astrological subject, place, in the universe, okay? This is concept, okay? When we are born, right, we're born in conceived in a point in a time of space. It's, can you see that? We have a physical manifestation, right? But our spiritual, meaning we have a spiritual dwelling, okay, in the universe like an address, right? And as we pass through, through space and time, all space and time are all manifested as one, but we all have different experiences, okay? So there's cosmic energy, which is given to the earth, okay, in a given space and time, okay? All the plants receive, food, water, light, energy, okay? And this is a very important concept in the astrological Vedic tradition, okay? They go into various points. So basically, the concept is basically that there is a sacred center. If I go into it, we'll go more like a Brahmastan in the middle, which is the breath inside you. And everything has a certain function around it, on a mandala. Okay, mandalas have been around in concept even in before 1 BC, and with the wars of Alexander the Great, many forms of architecture and many forms of sacred geometry have been passed from the east to the west and vice versa. So if you see a Renaissance building, you'll see certain forms which are, you know, conceptually are mandalas, which you can either describe in, you know, in home, you know, in churches, you know, monasteries throughout Europe as well. So what we're trying to do in concept is basically is that we can change a proportional scale, okay, in a big broader scheme of it, in the Vastu way of aligning proportions and spaces that are aligned to you and your family, okay, in the astrological way, okay. But Vastu is the essence of what holds everything together, okay. You know, like example, an atomic quantum way. If I get too abstract, please say so, because it's very esoteric to most people, okay. So everything is held together in vibration. You know, everything vibrates at a certain frequency of light, love, etc. Okay. So when we speak of these things, okay, we are trying to create a dwelling where the conscious resonance resonant at the highest level for you. And we have studies, you know, through with the soils, etc., and building technology to mimic the wave of proportions in a three-dimensional way, okay, and by certain human elements, okay. So when we start with even Western tradition in the West, we start with basic, you know, fingers, hands, you know, grains, corns, inches, okay. In India, they do the same thing with a various different type of scale with, you know, with like 3 barley, which they're almost equally inches, very close. They're very, you know, very close. So I'm trying to show a way of thinking today, how we orientate ourselves to the optimal best of consciousness with how we live. And the Indian form of Vastu Shastra is older than even Feng Shui. The cultural history of Feng Shui actually comes from India and been colonized, changed in its way that it carries on to another tradition. Just like as if we say, you know, Roman architecture led its way to Romanesque in various forms all the way down the line. So today we're going to look at, you know, kind of what really it is, and from a lecture perspective, and, you know, what do you feel if you hear most precept of American beauty is no disrespect, is when you buy your house, it's all economical, okay. You look at it like, well, does this house have Kohler toilets? As an example, it's a little exaggeration. Or does this have a sub-zero refrigerator? Or does this have Anderson or pellet windows? Right. So most people have no concept of how the space feels and vibrates. Okay. You know, does it speak to you? Does it speak to you personally? Right. Because we are conscious beings. You know, we are spiritual beings living a physical experience. And when things of these kind of conscious level get out of line, there tends to be some actual proof of this in studies that basically that people tend to fight in certain places. They're not comfortable. Light isn't coming through at all. And there's been a wave that when the people in the East, they look at orientations of buildings, they look at from a color spectrum, okay, the most best way to orientate a building is to the east, okay, for the rising light, because we're all on a planet and we're spinning, from east to west all the time. Doesn't matter, north, south, whatever else. And the color of light has effect on you psychologically, and physically. Okay, so if I ask you what light does the plants grow best at, so let's try to ask that question. if you're growing a plant, what light spectrum grows the best way of growing a plant?
I would say a full light spectrum.
Full light. But what has the most growing light of all?
What has the what?
What has the most growing light? When does the most photosynthesis take place?
Probably in the morning.
Correct. Okay. And what color spectrum of light is that?
It's like I don't know. I guess it would be more of a whitish light versus like a reddish light in the evening.
Yeah. So, anybody else want to take a try at this?
Yeah, golden light. Yeah, the golden hour first thing in the morning and last at night.
Okay, so I wanted you to take an experiment, but think about it right now, okay? If you get up before the pre-dawn light, what do you see? What's the color of the sky?
More of an orange light, isn't it? Or like a yellowish?
Blue.
Blue.
Correct. It's a blue purple.
Indigo.
Yes, you got it. It's a purple light, okay?
Violet.
Yes, very good. Okay, so we try to orientate our brains as if we're living beings to the the purple light, the spectrum of purples, the purple lights, and the purplish lights, contrast, to red light. Okay. So when we look at a building, we're trying to get a balance, okay, for energy, right? We look at a building is not just a place at 123 Main Street, okay, right? It's a physical place to the universe, both to the street you live in, orientation to the sun, moon, and the stars, right? These all have effects on your body because we are quantum physical bodies with different light and frequency. Okay? So orientation, is important. Okay, and then you have to know how does the soil resonate with you, the energy coming up from the ground. Soils can heal people. Okay, so I'm just trying to get the point of maybe asking a few questions, to think about. And I'm going to, what you feel from what I'm saying so far, your feedback, what I'm saying, what's your opinions on this? Sue, you want to say something?
No, I'm agreeing with you. You said, what's your opinions? I'm agreeing. Yeah.
Yeah. Have any of you experienced this kind of morning light, how it feels with you?
Yeah.
Okay. Have you ever experienced, for example, the feeling when you lie in bed, okay? How does the moon feel on your body? How do the stars feel when you lay in bed, Okay. So it's to become a full awareness of how you're feeling, how you're sleeping. So I'm going to share a video. It's about 50 minutes long about what Vastu in Vedic is from a good friend of mine. Okay, it may seem a little bit different, but he explains it so succinctly in the tradition. Okay, and then we'll have a little bit discussion maybe afterwards for about 10, 15 minutes. To what it is. The Maharishi University in Iowa is probably the biggest school, if you can see, the biggest plant in America of Vedic and Vastu architecture in the United States. Okay, because Maharishi, came here and he brought stuff from India with the Beatles and trained in meditation, and they're looking ways to experiment and actually have physical manifestations of actually they've done studies with double blind studies from how people felt in houses, how people change their beings, how people's relationships improve in these kind of scientific studies. That'll be beyond our scope, but I'll certainly refer you to the studies so you can see them. Okay. Then, we have, let's talk about problems in Western architecture today. Okay. In relationship to places. One of the most common mistakes is basically in a house, you'll see, is that people block various forms of plants or trees that are an access to your light of the rising sun. Okay. So when you have a rising light, you want the full light not obscured to the orientation of the house. Okay. Because we want all the positive effects of all electric light spectrum to come inside you and have a full effect within the proportion of the living edifice, living being. Okay. So it's obscure, but let me share, if I can, on my screen here, a few. We'll share that video and come back to it. Okay. You'll find it interesting because it's a professional speaker and I can speak more better than I can, but it gives you the basic understanding of what this is. Okay. So let me start with a basic before we get here. Vastu architecture, a traditional energy architecture, has a true holistic principle, and as such, an architect should have an insight of religion, languages, literature, astronomy, math, astrology, philosophy, sculpture, music, and other arts and science technology. So we will share this video here. Click this and it comes up. It's a very interesting subject. It's not something normally you think about, and I will kind of share my slides of orientation briefly of rooms, and then we'll carry on the conversation for a brief moment afterwards. Okay? All right? So here's like a typical room plate. We'll just kind of go up there and wrap it up here. If you can see, can you clearly see it or not? Can you see it here? So basically, typically, east is the the entrance of the edifice. Typically, meditation room is to the northeast. The kitchen is to the southeast, and the study library is to the straight north, and the dining room is to the south. The master bedroom is to the southwest. The living room is straight west, and the guest bedroom is typically to the northwest corner. Okay, that's typical orientation. And here we go through proportional scales of light, moon, and star proportions, etc. We're talking about the plinth and the top of the head of the building, and these kind of orientation principles. So this kind of showing the overall influence of the south being destructive influences. And here's a kind of a brief study at the end here. They've kind of concluded the quality of life have strongly improved, for family of residences, fulfillment of goals, comfort of home is greatly increased, and overall quality of living is improved here. Better health has happened for mental health, physical health, sleep, and less stress. There's been enormous studies basically in this community where people came with great, depression, and a lot of by orientation of these buildings, a lot of the mental energies of the mental dysfunctions stop completely. It's a phenomenal thing. These are kind of the basic brief overview points of improvement. We can look more on their website for more of the detailed medical studies. With that, we'll go back to our little discussion here amongst us all here, and I'll stop sharing the screen. And I'd like to get your points of what you thought of the presentation. It's a lot of information. So any comments, questions on this presentation you would like to add to this? It's a little different than you're used to thinking about, but
I have a question.
yes.
It's Laura. Are you an architect?
Yes.
And when did you start studying this type of architecture?
I've been on and off. It's kind of my inner passion per se. I've been studying this since 2010.
Did you ever design a house using this?
I've consulted on proportions of this, rectifications, and different concepts, even laid out developments for it.
It's super interesting. So for the average person, not everyone can build this type of house, but for an average person, what are your top 3 takeaway pieces of advice?
I think there's a number of levels of this. which can share the demonstration for in a bioenergetics, okay? We can rectify houses by simple techniques, okay? Or door orientation is the most simplest one. But there's ways I can rectify it through wave technology, through devices through bioenergetics. It's a side subject of this, but can be easily done by changing, adding some room orientation and things like this. Yes, it can be done cost effectively. It's the intersection of the actual Vastu and Vedic, the intersection between like biomedical and energetics, which we can measure and correct. It's intersection of architecture and medical science. It's like, example, if you say a chiropractic, okay, we can make you can rectify your spine. You can also rectify houses too as well. But the big thing is to make sure that you have correct light, threads of light in the house that are correct, okay, and watch your observance of the kind of the infrared light of the south. It can be highly dangerous to your body, on the frequency. So you have to kind of balance the light issues of the south, because it can be quite harmful to your eyes. Actually, if you look at the south light, it almost can blind you. It's so bright. So the Indian concept is trying to balance light. You can do shades, etc., like this kind of thing, and kind of simple things like how do you eat and how you study. Those are simple things you can rectify. Very simple.
Super interesting subject. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for listening.
Hi, Alan. This is Caryn. I have a question about the placement of the head when you're sleeping. What if the only place you can have your headboard is to the south? Is there anything
that's fine. It's fine. The north, putting your head in the north wall is the most dangerous.
It is?
Yes.
Oh, I misunderstood what, I thought it was the north and the east were the safe places to put the head.
Example, if your headboard, your top of your head, right? You follow me?
Yes.
The crown of your head should be facing on the east wall, okay? East wall. Second wall is the south, and the third is west, but never north.
Is there a particular reason for that?
It's the magnetic flow. For your cardiovascular system, especially north is not good. In the south, you would reverse it. In the south hemisphere, it'd be the other way around.
It's I find it fascinating, compared to Native American, the medicine wheel versus the bagua, and then now being introduced to Vastu. It's kind of interesting that each of these philosophies shares similar things, but then there's like conflicting information based on like positioning and placement of entrances and light, and the dealing with electromagnetic waves and all of that. So
yeah, have you lived an oriented life of like feng shui yourself, or
yeah, I had practiced that. I'm not an expert by any stretch. I just somebody had come to my place and helped me deal with some of the energies that were going on in my place when I was living in Chicago. And the interesting thing is that I lived in a 6-unit building, and the entrance was the west, but the front door faced the bathroom door, and then there's just a bunch of like weird things that would happen. And when I put certain things in place and just kind of was cognizant of how I was feeling from room to room, made a difference. So that awareness piece that you were talking about earlier really does play. It plays a part in all of this, and being able to recognize it. I really enjoyed your presentation. It was a little hard to hear the video at times, but overall, I enjoyed it. So thank you for bringing this to all of our attention.
Well, thank you as well. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Hi, Alan. This is Diana.
Hi.
Thanks again. As Caryn said, it was a really good and informative presentation. One question I had was, we've been talking a lot about meditation in our meetings, and trying to have like a space dedicated to it. So, I mean, if we, again, like the average person, if we cannot have a room dedicated to meditation, is there like a direction that we should be facing to help better with meditation?
Ideally to the northeast, and I'll explain why. Okay, if you get the northeast orientation, okay, you're trying to line your energies with the polar star. That's the concept. If you can't do that, then just face east.
Can you say that again, Alan?
The best orientation is to face northeast. If you took a solar chart, okay, and you line yourself to the polar star, if we draw a line, you follow the polar star.
You mean like the North Star?
Yeah, North Star. Yeah,
okay.
Yes. It's a little off, but it varies depends on the globe. It's sort of Muslims do something similar, a little bit like this. But if you can't do that, then go straight to the east. If they have no option. But it's the idea to make a quiet space and let your mind be conscious of where you're at. The east is the best. If you can't do northeast.
So your eyes are facing the northeast to the North Star, not your back.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
That's helpful. So, and just to clarify, I think it was mentioned in the video too that using a regular compass doesn't help. So, do we need to, do these or measure these directions using a specific type of compass?
There is ways of doing this. In Chicago, we're not that far off, but different parts of the country, it can get far off. Okay, we're not too bad off. If we were to rotate the true east conduction here, it's about 2 or 3 degrees tilted more towards the northwest. If you have north with straight in a compass, you would turn it, going from counterclockwise about 2 degrees. The true north.
Oh, I see. Okay. 2 degrees off, you said counterclockwise?
Yes.
Okay.
But I can help people with this. If you want help with this, I can the rectification calculation. But these are small things you can do. But I'll have one day we'll meet together. I'll do a demonstration of waves with a wave device, and you can see how it'll be interesting. A little German device to use. And also too, it's really important that basically in your homes, you're not laying on top of energetic, ley lines, because these are very powerful. They exist in the buildings, and they can make you very sick if they're inside your EMF waveform, which are not good for your body. So that's a side subset of this.
Hey there, I have a very good presentation. It was very interesting. It's a brand new topic for me. I have sort of 2 comments and then 1 question, a real challenging question, I think.
Yeah.
I posted just information about an app that we use in photography, which you could set any date, any time, and you get information on sunrise, sunset, moonrise, moonset, golden hour, everything. And I just did that, and the presenter said March 26th was the date. And so my house is directly north. At March 26th, it's coming up right on the east. And I noticed today the sun is like 20 degrees north of that. So it varies considerably, probably the further north you are. but I did notice, and not planned, but in the mornings I sit out on a deck, have my cup of coffee, and I'm facing east, get that sun in my face. So that unintentionally, maybe we're just drawn to something more comfortable, and all the plants and flowers on the east side and the east windows grow better.